Welcome back to Neurodiversity with Theo Smith. Today, we have an inspiring guest joining us. Sarah Dixon, the Director of Accessible Learning Foundation, ALF. Sarah began her career as a solicitor working as a commercial property lawyer in London and later went on to become a successful director of a property agency. However, her journey took a powerful U-turn when she became a passionate advocate for neurodivergent communities, motivated in part by her own experiences of being a parent of neurodivergent children. Now, through her work at the Accessible Learning Foundation, ALF, Sarah is campaigning for better identification and support of neurodivergent conditions and traits across schools, workplaces, and even prisons. We're excited to hear more about her story, her transition to this vital work, and a vision for a more inclusive world. So, Sarah, welcome to the podcast. Say hello to our friends who've joined us today.
Hi, Theo. Thank you so much for having me today. Hi, everyone. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you my journey so far.
Incredible. Really pleased to have you here. And what happened there? I know about pivoting and shifting and moving around careers, but when we think of, lawyer, I guess the property lawyer might have been a bit of a hint in the direction you took, moving into property, and then into leading an organization like ALF. Just take us on that journey.
It's been a really interesting ride and one that was been quite unexpected, really. So I read geography at Bristol University, didn't really know what I then wanted to do. So my father said, "Okay, if you don't know what to do, Sarah, I'll give you a piece of advice. You either go and train and become an accountant or become a lawyer, because they just provide you with really helpful life skills." I was not very good with numbers, so I said, "Okay, Dad, I'll go off and train to be a lawyer." So off I went and I qualified, and I went to work as a commercial property lawyer, which I did for including training, about 7 years. And it then gets to a stage where you either go for partnership or you don't. And I just didn't enjoy it enough. So I was like, I've had a really great time. I've really enjoyed myself. I've learned some amazing skills, but I think it's time for me to move on. And I just came across this amazing company called London Property Match, and they are actually house finders. So I helped for 14 years people find flats and houses in London. I love being out and about. I love being with people, a whole different variety of people. And actually, my legal training was brilliant when it came to sort of buying the property. Along the way, I got married, had 2 children, 2 girls who are now aged 13 and 10. And they are both neurodivergent. When my eldest quite severely dyslexic and has ADHD, and my youngest dyslexic and also has ADHD, it was quite obvious when my eldest went to school at about 5, 6 that she was dyslexic. Not that I really knew anything about dyslexia or neurodivergence as a subject. I was lucky enough that she was identified early, that school were incredible and gave her lots of support. It got to lockdown time when she was about 8, and off the back of home learning and online learning, I could see the disparity between her and her cohort. So I actually moved her to a specialist dyslexic school for 3 years. She's now back in mainstream. My youngest, not so dyslexic and doing okay at school, both ADHD, both medicated. Through that journey, I also started doing quite a lot of voluntary work at school, and just actually helping people, as cheesy as that sounds, was just so attractive. Working in a team, just sharing knowledge, and I don't know if it was something to do with hitting 40, but I suddenly thought, actually, I've sort of really enjoyed property, but it's time to move on. I want to go and work in the voluntary sector. I want to give back. And neurodivergence, because of the journey of my children, is something I'm really passionate about. I set up a parent support group at school, which is how I first sort of delved into it, I guess. I found my journey with my eldest quite a lonely one. School were great, they were there, they supported me, but I sort of didn't want to show particular emotion with them, and it's all quite overwhelming. And so I set up a parent support group. It's just a WhatsApp group. It's now got over 100 members on it, which I'm really proud of. And it's an incredible network. And it was through that that I met Matt Hancock and I moved to ALF.
Amazing. And that's incredible. So I guess we've seen a lot of that over the past few years. I think especially during COVID, where parents had a whole new experience of just being with their children a lot more and recognizing some of those challenges, some of those barriers, some of those struggles. And I think we've seen um, a lot more people searching for help, but it not being there, right? And
Yeah.
so your example there is, I don't think, lives in isolation. It is common across the whole of the UK, if not many parts of the world, where when you can't find the help, you either create it yourself. For me, and it was the book, writing the book to help people
Yeah.
in the workplace, because that's what made sense to me. But I was thinking more long term. How can I help my child further down the road? Because I couldn't. Maybe the disconnect with maybe some of the schooling and my own struggles made it really challenging for me. So I guess what we're now seeing is a shift from some of those community groups to how do we make that into more meaningful, long term kind of positive change support, because it feels like there's just this chasm, there's this gap for parents in support. And I heard a stat
Yeah.
recently that 40% of children now meet the criteria for anxiety disorder in schools. And children are a reflection of their home life, right? They're a reflection of their parents. So if they're meeting the criteria for anxiety disorder, there's a very good chance that their parents are struggling, right? What has
Yeah, no,
been, yes,
definitely. I think with COVID, as horrible and a difficult time as it was certainly really useful for me as a parent to actually understand what was being taught to my children, how it was being taught. And it was just really useful to see, as I mentioned, the sort of disparity between where she was against the class. And it wasn't a sort of a disparity on intelligence, it was she just couldn't access it. She couldn't read still at the age of 8. And it was just really obvious that education was running away from her. So for me, I mean, as I say, I was so lucky that her learning differences were picked up at an early age. But for me, it is just wanting to give parents that support. So if they notice a difference, that they can act as quickly as they can. Um, because so much can be done, and so often it's very little changes that can help so much. So, like you writing your book about the workplace, for me, it was just trying to help parents, go through their emotions, sort their emotions, find people who can help them and their children so that children can progress and hopefully not become anxious and everything else that can happen off the back of not enough support.
absolutely. And do you think your new role now, do you think your experiences with being a solicitor and working within property is going to make a real difference? Or have you started to see the benefits of those life experiences and how you can put that into practice when we think of the complexity around this topic and around advocating and around making positive change?
I mean, so obviously they're very different areas. I think my legal background really helps me with writing concisely, with being able to understand documents and not being afraid of large amounts of text. Um, with my property work, I have been involved with all sorts of people, and it's sort of just taught me what my strengths are. I love being out and about with people. I love organizing, um, and so I think that's really what I bring to the table to ALF. Um, is my personal skills, my organizational skills, and through my children, just a deep passion that even if I help one child, one family, one person in the workplace, one prisoner, I have done something. So much needs to be done. Every conversation I have is a positive one, but there is a lot to be done.
Brilliant. And I think that'll resonate with a lot of people listening in, Sarah, because there's so many people, so many advocates working in a variety of different spaces, whether it's within health or the prison service, or it's in community work, or in education, or just in business generally. A lot of the people who are really driven to make positive changes are coming directly from personal life experiences, like you've just explained. I mean, most people are trying to make a difference because they recognize there's a gap there. And that if it's not going to be filled, they're having to step forwards and step into that gap to rectify it. On that basis, if we think about ALF, then what is ALF's mission? What is it that you as an organization and you personally are trying to achieve now over the coming weeks, months, and years?
So it is supporting and campaigning for neurodivergent people. We operate in three main areas. Primary schools, where it is all about early identification and teacher training. To us, it is just so important that children who learn differently are picked up on and given the support as early as possible. That is really, really important. Matt, who is our founder, his dyslexia wasn't identified till he was at university, and it's an area he's really passionate about. The second area is within prisons, where it's a much more challenging environment to work in, obviously. A really good policy development from the last government was the introduction of NSMs, Neurodiversity Support Managers, and there is now one NSM in every prison in England and Wales, which is a brilliant development. So they are a way in for us. But what we do within that space, we're still very much developing. It's looking like it will be sort of putting workshops in for prisoners and staff, so they better understand themselves and what triggers them, and yeah, just general support. It's a very difficult environment. And then within the workplace, it's about awareness. We had our first conference about a month ago, which was really exciting. Again, there's a lot of good work being done in this space, but a lot more to be done. It's sort of how we encourage businesses to actually make changes so people in the workplace are supported properly.
And what do you think? How are organizations going to get to that point, you think? If we specifically think about businesses and changes in culture, and I guess the challenges with the economy globally, there's a lot of instability. And I think there are many organizations that really want to make the change. And I guess there will be many government organizations, prison services, education, teachers who want to make these changes, but just the current pressures on their time, on
Yeah.
the communities, on the work that they do, can be
Yeah.
creating that additional barrier to them being able to get over to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, there are very different, in the three spaces we work in, there are different pressures. So I'm very much finding from our work within primary schools is that there's a great awareness and understanding of neurodivergence actually, but what is holding schools back is funding and also time. The teachers are incredibly busy and it's finding time, but funding for me is the main one. Again, prison sector, less understanding, but more and more so, but again, a massive funding issue. With the workplace, it's interesting. I find it's much more almost generational. It's a culture. It's a culture problem that isn't being quite worked through yet. It's a sort of fear of many employees not wanting to admit, for fear that it's going to, they won't progress their careers. I think a lot more has to go on at a really, really basic level within companies, and a lot to come from managers. So if your manager is neurodivergent, just them saying, "Oh yes, I'm dyslexic," or "Oh yes, I'm autistic," just suddenly a sigh of relief. And if there is another neurodivergent team member, they feel that they've actually secure enough to come forward and sort of, join conversations. I really think simple things like WhatsApp groups, as simple as it sounds, are just amazing. I heard about one company, and they weren't going to sort of make any changes yet, or they were just, it was work, well, they're going to work just on a culture, on a pure culture, on their culture first, before they started going in to make bigger changes. And one way they were doing that was literally by a parents' WhatsApp group. And it was incredible, the sort of relief and the response they were getting by employees having a space to talk about their children. And as we know, neurodivergence is genetic. So often then the parents are neurodivergent, and then you can sort of access your employees via that way. I think it's really simple things, but it has to come from a culture first, I think, with businesses, and that's what has to be worked on.
Absolutely. I think also I've heard recently from quite a few leaders saying, even when we want to help, often one of the challenges we can find is that there's a proportion of people now who come forwards but have no idea around their their neurological strengths and challenges and what's going to help them. So they finally, and I get this, that really resonates with me because of late diagnosis or because of no diagnosis. You've got people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s who recognize there is something not quite right that is holding
Mm.
them back or creating a barrier for them, but just have absolutely no idea how to construct that into a this is what I need to help me. And then that becomes a
Yeah,
real barrier to one, that individual getting help, and two, the employer giving the help. So there's then this the big frustration from both sides that they
yeah.
can't get to that kind of
I
solution.
mean, again, I think that leads to an identification point, and obviously, it's, even if it's a later stage in life. But I heard about one company recently who had negotiated with their health insurers, and the health insurers were then paying for the employees to go and be tested for dyslexia or ADHD, autism, etc. And I think I am just so pro a diagnosis, because I think once you know how you work, you know what your strengths are, you know what your weaknesses are, and your weaknesses can be better supported. I think until you don't know that, it's really helpful, and it can seem incredibly overwhelming.
So I will just add a kind of an extra element to that, which is I agree. However, the current system and process means that with a diagnosis does not come those things that you've just mentioned, as we
No.
know with my
Then that
daughter.
comes down to the workplace, doesn't it? But I think if you know you're, let's just say, dyslexic, and you go to a good psychologist to get that diagnosis, they, with my children, if I relate it back to their educational psychologist report, it's an amazing report, and it shows me exactly how their brain works. And I think even walking out with a piece of paper or more of an understanding of yourself is the first step. It then, I think, comes to a culture problem, whether you feel comfortable taking that to your employer, and them then hopefully having the ability to put various things in place to support you. But I think I hear very much what you're saying, but I think it's really helpful if it's sort of, then what toolbox you've been given.
No, I
You know,
absolutely agree with you. Our educational psychologist told us, don't worry, most kids grow out of it. And don't worry, your child might go on to become a painter or decorator or something. So don't worry. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You are not limiting the aspirations of my daughter. She could go on
no,
to become the prime minister. Like,
yeah,
painter and decorator, not a problem. She might, brilliant,
yeah,
incredible. She might love that life. It might give her everything that she needs. Perfect. But already you're limiting some of these potential. So my point is the way that it's currently structured is we're not guaranteed to get the absolute thing. I agree that we need, which is what you're saying, which is like the strengths
mm,
and the challenges, which I think absolutely will be hugely beneficial for everybody moving forwards. That is really going to be the game changer, because then we enable, and I think that was the point before, we enable people then to walk into a workplace kind of knowing this is what I'm really good at, this is what I really struggle with, these are the things I believe could help me because I've already utilized them in the past. Academia often looks quite different to the workplace, so we have a problem there that adaptations in school or university don't mirror those
Mm.
adaptations that you may require in a workplace, for example. So that we have a bit of a gap there. But no, I'm absolutely with you. I just, I guess I'm kind of hoping that through the work that you do and through the work that others are doing, we can find a more kind of streamlined way of ensuring that young people and whoever else get the kind of the this is the strengths and here's the challenges and here's some of the mechanisms to deal with
Yeah,
them.
I think it's really important with a diagnosis that it's very much presented as these are your strengths and these are your weaknesses, because wow, there are so many strengths that come with neurodivergence. I do not worry about my children when they go into the big wide world. I worry about them now in education because it is so narrow minded and antiquated and all pretty much based on how you perform in a written exam. But the skills, the sort of mindset, the thought processes that my children have, I am really actually quite jealous of. It is incredible. It's incredible the questions my eldest asks me, how she sort of sees the world. For example, when I was still doing my property finding and it was during Brexit and business was really quiet. And she said to me, Mummy, why are you really quiet at the moment? I said, well, a lot of clients don't like uncertainty. So they'll just wait until we've worked through Brexit and then they'll come back and they'll feel happier buying. She said, but Mummy, that's silly because prices will just go up then. And it's just like, yeah, well done. You're 8, and you've totally seen the problem from from the top down, and it's just amazing how she can just see that and go, well, no, that's just silly. And so I don't worry about them in the big wide world, but it's now getting them through education to ensure that they come out of as confident people and not chewed up by it all. That's my main concern. But yes, part of my work at ALF, the Accessible Learning Foundation, is just there's so much to do, but very much sort of bridge that gap you're talking about.
Brilliant. Do you think there's any shifts that we need to focus on from a legal policy perspective to be able to enable more speed of change within
Yeah,
this?
speed is a big problem, Theo, isn't it?
Yeah,
Everything takes such a long time. And I know that was one of Matt's frustrations whilst he was in Parliament. But I mean, I think Matt's bill that he got the first reading of was amazing, and it's just such a shame for that reason that there was a new government, because that's now has to be taken right back to the beginning. But if the government, if they were able to pass a bill that ensured early screening of all neurodivergent conditions and better training for teachers, that would be incredible. That would be an amazing piece of policy. Um, yeah, I think that would be incredible.
great. Yeah, and that goes back to my point, I guess, of the earlier intervention, ensuring that we don't have people in the 30s, 40s, 50s not understanding their cognitive strengths and challenges because they've been
And
spoon
also,
fed.
yeah, and also, there's that horrible phrase, the school to prison pipeline. And, so often, well, it can be that if you're not supported, you don't have the support at home, and, you fall out of school, you feel you don't belong, you feel you're different, you're really struggling, and you're misunderstood. You can so easily end up in places where you shouldn't, doing things you shouldn't. And if we can just get that early identification, I would really hope that we could catch those youngsters, and give them the proper support they deserve
Absolutely. And
before
that's
it's
one of
too
the biggest
late.
biggest drivers for me. I was that young
Yeah,
person in school,
yeah,
and it's on a knife's edge of where you end up.
yeah,
And I think that for me is a big driver in terms of my family and my community and the young people I think about. So I think even if that was the major focus for us to change that challenge that
yeah,
we face, I think it's such an important one and could be transformative in terms of communities, culture, society, and have a really positive impact long term. So I'm hopeful for that. What's the future then for you, Sid? What do you hope to see now? What what is Alf going to start to be doing? What are you going to start to be doing? What's your hopes, dreams, and aspirations? I just ask that
So
often. What are your hopes,
I'm
dreams, and
still
aspirations?
so very much still at the beginning of my journey with Accessible Learning Foundation. We only launched a year ago. I'm really proud of what we've done in this year. We're now a registered charity. We've got some great trustees on board. We've got our first screening project in a primary school up and running. There is still so much to do. So I do see quite a long road still with Alf, which is all really exciting. I'm really enjoying it. I'd love to obviously develop our early identification program more quickly. We need money to do that. I'd love to get projects up and running in prisons. And I'd love to find ways to harness the energy that we had at our business conference and work more within that space and really encourage businesses to look at themselves and to actually take action. So often you see amazing things on companies' websites and in companies' brochures, and then you actually ask the employees and nothing's actually being done on the ground. It's a very tick box exercise at the moment. So a lot to be done, really exciting, definitely staying at Alf.
Brilliant. And if people want to help and support the work that that you're doing, if they want to lift some of that weight, if people just want to come and find out more, what are the things that they should be doing? How can they help? How can they get engaged? How can they lift some of that weight to help drive this forwards for you?
Yeah, so the best place to go is our website, accessiblelearningfoundation.org. You can reach out to me at our email address there. Always on the lookout for volunteers. We've got some great social media volunteers at the moment. If there was someone that wanted to help me out with more sort of boring admin, admin tasks, advise just generally, and you've got charity experience, that'd be incredible. But just every conversation is a positive one. If they want to find out more, if they feel they have something to offer, they think that we need, I'd love to hear from them. And very welcome any donations. Again, you can do that through our website.
Incredible. And what's coming up in terms of any future events? Obviously, you've had the one more recently. Do you have any plans for any others next year that we should watch
So
out for?
next year, well, I'm up in Glasgow in March at an event, a tech event, which is really exciting. Alpha events, we're still very much sort of planning at the moment. We are sort of gaining feedback from the last one, and as I said, working out how we can move forward and harness that energy. Watch this space, Theo.
Brilliant. Well, I'll pop in some links for the show that you can catch below in the description. And yeah, really appreciate you coming on today, Sarah. I urge you to check out Alf and offer your support where you can.
Thank you very much for having me, Theo. Thanks for all the amazing work you do.
Cheers.